Hi, welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to share with you the top 10 things we do before we ever type one word of a new story.
Before we jump into that, make sure that if you like this video, you give it a thumbs up, that you subscribe to our channel, and you hit the notification bell so you never miss a Friday upload.
And make sure that you hang around until the end of the video because, like always, we're going to give you our #1 top trick that you do not want to miss.
All right, let the countdown begin. Number 10 of our tips for what we do before we write down one word of our story. Choose your genre and your subgenre. You need to know what you're writing in. It's that simple.
Number 9, choose character names. This is like a big deal for us. I drive Crystal crazy with the character names. I'll get on the list, baby names. That's what we do first, especially for writing just like a romance with regular people names. Like Adrift was set in a high school. It was paranormal, but it was set in a high school, so they can have like regular people names. If it's like a fantasy or like something set in an alternate kind of universe, you might have to get more creative with your names. But you need to do that first, obviously, because how are you going to write your story with no names?
Number 8, choose your level of spice. We're always going to talk about spice because we're romance writers. Maybe there's no spice, and that's okay. Maybe you're fade to black. That's okay. Maybe you are going to bring 5 chili peppers. That's okay. Just make sure that you know how you want the romance, or maybe it's not even a romance, just spice, to flow throughout your story.
Number 7, if it's paranormal or fantasy, figure out what type of paranormal or fantasy creatures your characters are going to be. If they're going to be demons, angels, fae, elves, kobold, what are they going to be? You need to figure that out before you start writing.
And if you need a little help on that, we'll put a link up here to our writing fantasy and world building video. You should go check that out because that will help you out a lot. Number 6, this may sound kind of silly, but I think it's important because sometimes you try to throw in a good trope as you're going and it's really not working. You should really think about what tropes you want your story to have and how you're going to have those tropes play out. There's certain things that are really simple. One bed, 2 people. That one is going to work out in one scene, but there might be other tropes that you want to do, like enemies to lovers or friends to lovers.
Fake dating.
Or fake dating. And those are going to take a little bit more time, and you're going to need to sprinkle that throughout your story. And so you should really think about that and how that's going to work with what you already have set in your mind as a plot.
Number 5, choose your setting. If your setting is a real place like Nashville or Phoenix or Paris or Orlando, you should do research on that. If you live there already, then you're lucky. If you don't, or if you have never been there, you need to research it. You need to make sure that you are accurately representing it, because I guarantee you that someone who does live there or has been there multiple times will call you out. If it is not a real place, but based on a real place, for example, in Spellbound, we write about a coastal town in Connecticut. Well, it's not a real town, but it's kind of like some towns that are in that area. We research towns in that area. If you're writing about a totally made up place, like if you were going to write about like a place in Akatar, like Prithian, that's completely made up. She had to build that entire world. Well, you need to build that entire world before you start.
Number 4, I think this one gets left out a lot when people are pantsers, and it's really important. And that is, what is the motivation of your antagonist? Why is your antagonist doing what they're doing? What is their backstory? You need to know what the driving force is behind them. They have a whole story. We've talked about this before. Your villain doesn't think they're a villain unless they're really being villainy. But most of the time, they think their cause is just as just as your protagonist does. So spend a moment with your villain, and even if you're not going to touch it in your story, which is totally fine, I think having a firm grasp on that will make your villain feel more authentic, will help to make like everything they're doing a little bit more, heinous or whatnot. So really just get a firm grasp on your antagonist before you ever start writing them.
Number 3 is related to that, but with side characters. Make sure you have some internal conflicts and subplots with your side characters, because those characters sometimes become really important. Even sometimes you might end up writing spin-offs about your side characters. Make sure that you flesh those characters out a little bit when they're pretty big parts of your story. We're not talking about like, you know, the guy who works at the gas station or whatever. We're talking about like your main character's best friend, a parent even. Like sometimes the parents can be a big deal in the story. Make sure that they have their own like enough depth for them to be really important in the story.
Number 2, kind of going back to all the paranormal and fantasy stuff.
This is from our own experience, so please don't ignore this. If you don't hear anything else we say, please hear this.
Work out your magic system, and go as far as working out your magic system to figuring out the back story of that magic system. We have written stories, Spellbound. We really didn't have a firm grasp on the magic and the kobolds and what that was all about and how they came to Earth. And that ended up being a big issue because it took away some of the depth of our story. It didn't feel so authentic or even realistic. Even though you're writing about things that are not realistic, it should make the reader feel like
world
they could really happen. Like, yes, I see where that's coming from. And ours was so untidy and just was not woven into the story well. And so you really want to just spend some time on it. It's hard, we know, but you got to do it before you ever start writing your story, or you're going to end up with lots of loose ends and plot holes.
And number 1, even if you aren't a major planner, you need to at least know the beginning, the middle, and the end. You need to know how your story is going to end. Even if you don't know exactly how you're going to get there in between all those little steps, you need to at least know how you want it to end.
And here's our bonus tip. We talk all the time about us planning, but here's a secret. We have the story worked out from how we're going to get from beginning to end as far as a general idea, but sometimes our chapters themselves are not worked out, and we'll get about halfway through the book and then go, okay, it's time to sit down and really think about our third act and how we're going to wind this all up. You do not have to, as a planner, have it all worked out right away. But you should come to the point in your story where you go, okay, these are my key things that still need to happen, and here's how I'm going to move my characters, or my characters need to smoothly move through this, because sometimes we have a problem, and we've done this too, where we're driving the story and our characters are not. And that's different than saying, oh, my character took it a different way. Like,
oh God,
there are characters, we control them, but there is something about making it feel like the character is driving the story and not forcing them into situations so you can get from point A to point
fit your
B.
plot.
Yeah, and so make sure that you're really thinking about that and the natural progression of how we get to that climax and then to the resolution.
That's it. The 10 things that we do before we ever write down one word. So you may not do them all, but you should try some of them, because we promise they'll help you.
And if you want to see how that worked out for us, go head on over to Wattpad. You can read all of our stories there free at Crystal and Felicity.
And as always, write what you love.